So today I'll be speaking on a very important area of that is emerging issues and regulatory challenges in cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. It's a very important area because nowadays the way the market is changing, and then the way we are handling our business and also the contracting and payment process is a very important area to explore because this is going to the different direction about the normal practice, because in this entire process there is no central system because things are distributed, and also the payments are mostly made in the bitcoins, that is cryptocurrency. This is the future of the world, because the way things are growing, this is the future. But currently there are a lot of challenges in this area because we have to see the regulatory part. Currently there is no proper regulation at global level, and also in India government is not very sure that what is going to be the Indian approach, because the Arun Jaitley, when he was the finance minister, he has said that India is neither opposing not against the this technology. But now the time has come, we have to take a proper measure and to define the terms and conditions and the policy guidelines to provide the level playing field for the entire world to get the real benefit of this technology. So in the entire the presentation, I will try to give the brief idea about the particular technology and cryptocurrency and the challenges in this process, and also give chance to these participants to ask questions at the end. So I'll be discussing about I'll give brief idea about the this technology. Then I'll discuss about the jurisdictional problems of the crypto assets, privacy and data protection, this transfer of data, data security on blockchain, risk of cyber attacks, double spending and these DDoS attacks and smart contracts. Governance issues, I'll discuss about the impact on the accountability, taxation challenges, regulator working with the industry, meeting governance objectives, and then I'll conclude at the end. The blockchain is a distributed ledger technology, is a tamper-evident and tamper-resistant digital ledger implemented in a distributed fashion. This emerging technology, which enables direct transactions within a ledger without need for a central authority or trusted intermediary, has the potential to re-engineer economic models and enable the creation of markets and products previously unavailable or unprofitable for the across the emerging markets. However, in considering the potential benefits of blockchain, the organizations must also consider the associated risks and how they can be managed. The risks can be following: that jurisdictional challenges, crypto assets, privacy and data protection, double spending, and distributed denial of service attacks. Several risks have been identified and overcome at similar innovative leaps in the recent past, including the commercialization of the internet and cloud computing. It is essential that these enterprises understand all risks inherent in blockchain system, including being able to clearly identify who is accountable and legally responsible for the blockchain's key characteristics, present challenges to the existing legal and regulatory framework. It is comprised of digitally recorded data in blocks that are linked together in chronological order in a manner that makes the data difficult to alter once recorded without the alteration of all subsequent blocks and collusion of a majority of the network. Each node on the network generally contains a complete copy of the entire ledger, from the first block created, the genesis block, to the most recent block one. Each block contains a hash, fixed length alphanumeric string generated from a string of text, pointer as a link to a previous block, as timestamp, and a transaction data. It means that once the data input is given at the node, it is having the lot of information, and data is flowing to different these chains, and this chain is known to all the participants. It means that it is very challenging to change data at one place, because if you want to change data, you have to change the data at several places. This way, it is very transparent and also it is safe and secure. By its nature, distributed ledger technology allows for transaction and data to be recorded and shared across distributed network of participants without the need for a trusted intermediary. So the main benefit is that in this process, there is no intermediary. It's a peer-to-peer transaction between one person to other person, and these two persons only know how and what they are sending the information, what they're sharing. So the lack of intermediary, because there's lack of central system. So this is very cost effective and also very safe and secure, because third party is not involved. The original instance of the blockchain, that is Bitcoin, was to be enabled peer-to-peer transaction without the requirement for a cost of a central party. So because the moment we have central party, it is a very costly affair. It is raising the cost. Organizations wishing to develop a decentralized application on a blockchain therefore face a new set of risks and issues to manage. Most of these stems from the fact that we live in a world where centralized governance and control is the norm, because generally we believe in centralization. So our the political system, our democratic system, in our even in the multinational system, all are depending on a centralized norm. So this technology is going from the normal practice and going to believe that even without having a centralized system, centralized place, we can do something without the support of central system. Peer-to-peer technology is promoted. Accordingly, the vast majority of countries, laws and regulations envision centralized business or structures with a singular seat of control and responsibility. Because if we see the central thing, central system, it means that the central system has the responsibility. But the moment we are saying that there is no central system, no central authority, no regulator at the central level, it means that the question will arise that now if there is some default between these two persons, what is going to be the liability and who is going to solve the problem and where is the evidence? Because third party is missing in this process. So these are some of the gray areas of the blockchain. Debating from this arrangement poses a challenge from a legal and regulatory perspective and raises the enforcement issues, that what will be the enforcement mechanism and what will be the regulation. This is particularly the case when it comes to regulated sectors such as the financial services. Because in the financial services, for example, all the banks are run by the central bank, that is RBI. And then all the branches under a particular bank controlled by the central branch. But in this technology, if you are going to shift the financial services from normal thing to the blockchain model, there will be a lot of disruption will happen, because the central thing will not be there. In this sector, there is a traditionally been some form of central counterparty, which is often regulated. Within a particular system or process, that central party is accountable and takes responsibility for the provisions of the services to all of the other participants through a contractual framework underpinned by the legal and regulatory structure. So this arrangement will be by a contract. The central party has a contract with the all other parties, and the relations is governed by the contract. But between when the peer-to-peer transaction, third party is missing. Now the question is that how they are going to handle their relationship. An example of this would be the role of a central bank or other institution in clearing and settlement of the processes. For example, if you submit any check, it will be going to the clearing house, that is central place, and it will clear the check. But in this process, when I'm saying that there is no central authority, that's why it will be kind of the question mark to find out the procedures and the regulatory aspect about this particular point. So I want to share the clipping. So it is visible to all of you. You got the clip?
Yes, sir. It's readable.
Yeah. So these are types of blockchains. So it is basically two types, open type and closed type. In the open type, we have public permissible, we have public permissionless and public permissioned kind of the group. Second is that in the closed type, we have consortium group, and then we have private permission, that is enterprises. In open group, we have further division, that the red, open to anyone, that anybody can write, and then commitment will be to anyone, and the examples are Bitcoin and Ethereum. So Bitcoin and Ethereum are actually running on the pattern of open model in a public permissionless system. Then we have public permission system where this is open to anyone. It is authorized. Only authorized participants will be allowed to participate in this process. And then all or subject of authorized participant will be kind of responsible. Example is the sovereign kind of this technology. In a consortium model, we have restricted to an authorized set of participants. Authorized participants are there, and all are subset of authorized participants. And then multiple banks operating or shared ledger. So the consortium model. And the last one is in the closed system is that private permission system, the enterprises, fully private or restricted to a limited set of authorized nodes. Network operator only will write, and commitment is there to network operator only. And then internal bank ledger shared between parent company and the subsidiaries. So these are the four kind of the model of the blockchain that is currently available in the market. So however, in many blockchains use cases, there is no such centralized party that takes responsibility for the provisions of services or controls associated data sets. Instead, each party in the blockchain network holds a copy of the data rather than relying on a single central party to hold and maintain the master copy. For example, the blockchain technology is being used to simplify cross-border payments, removing the need for transfer to pass through multiple parties. So best part is that because the transfer is happening on one person to other person, and immediate transaction is there within seconds. So we are able to then pass so many authorities in between. That is cost saving and also time saving. And also there are also we are going to reduce the charges. So it is going from the concerned person to the destination without any wasting of time, without any extra additional charges, and also it is reaching very fast. While such decentralization can bring benefits, it also poses a legal and regulatory challenge if there is no central party that is responsible and can be held accountable. The key issues that present risk to firms using blockchain, which are explained further below, are this blockchain system spanning multiple jurisdictions. Because if you are passing the money can be going from your place to any part of the world. So it is crossing several jurisdictions. Now the question is that how you are going to regulate that particular transaction. Then we have crypto assets, data protection, and privacy compliance, and cyber attacks. So problem of jurisdictions. Either nodes of a decentralized ledger can span multiple locations around the world. It is often difficult to establish which jurisdiction laws and regulations apply to a given application. There is a risk that transactions performed by an organization could fall under very jurisdiction in which a node in the blockchain network is situated, resulting in an overwhelming number of laws and regulations that might apply to transactions in a blockchain-based system. In a public blockchain system, it will be important to consider what law might apply to transactions and consider appropriate risk management that should apply. However, with the permissions and private system, it is easier to create some form of legal framework and internal governance structure that will dictate the governing law that will apply to transactions. In a private system, it would also be beneficial to consider some form of agreed disputes resolution process that parties will follow. Crypto assets. The difficulties of applying the existing regulatory regime can be seen clearly when it comes to the use of crypto assets. We currently see a range of opinions from regulators on crypto assets, from outright skepticism and bans in some countries to more cautious investor warnings from others. While yet other countries have introduced regimes to attract more crypto activity, these divergences of the opinions and the resulting pitfalls are well documented in the example of initial coin offerings. So just like we have initial to launch any share, he has to give initial public offerings, and also he has to satisfy the investor protection norms. Same way, anybody is going to launch this Bitcoin, he has to provide the initial coin offerings. But the question is that there is no protection of the investor because it's a peer-to-peer transaction. The popularity is of selling tokens via initial coin offerings as a means of the startup fundraising has exploded in the last few years. For example, in 2018, from January to November, there are 935 initial coin offerings, and they have raised $21.7 billion. That actually projects via traditional venture capital during the same period. So if you see, it is comparable to right now in that period, how the venture capital was raised. So now this shows that how quickly and very strongly this particular technology is gaining the importance among the corporate world. But actually we do not have proper regulatory mechanism yet. However, given the divergence of the regulatory opinion on the specific legal implications of a token sale, organizations that fail to consider at the outset whether their token sale may be compliant in their jurisdictions in which they plan to offer token may face an uncertain future. Organizations may also have to ensure that the sale of token is limited to buyers in their desired jurisdictions in order to remove the risk of the offer expanding to jurisdictions that are more heavily regulated or have outrightly bans of the initial coin offerings. In the United States, the Securities and Exchange Commission has expressed concern that many ICOs are either scams or attempts to raise money without complying with the investor protection laws. So, as per the, if you see the, as per the kind of the feedback from the different markets, even American Security Exchange Commission is saying that in the sale, purchase, and transaction of the blockchain and the cryptocurrency, mostly it is the black money is now involved, and also a lot of the kind of the scams are involved. So the people who are doing the fair business, they are actually still shy to use this technology, and those who are having a lot of black money and want to do some scams, and all the income, the Hawala transactions and all these kind of the money laundering, all the drugs business, all the kind of negative business is mostly happening through this kind of technology. So that's why it is further raising the issue that why we are still not going to seriously regulate, once this is a very, very important area for all of us. Other countries, the policymakers and regulators have sought to clarify the position by agreeing that not all initial coin offerings would be required to comply with the same investor protection laws as would be the case with an initial public offerings. So this has led to real difficulties for organizations that wish to use tokens in a legitimate way and are committed to complying with the regulatory regime wherever the token is made available. So this is a conflicting statement. A country which is requiring the lot of investor protection laws for initial public issues for share market, the same country may also be saying that no, if you're going to raise the money through the initial coin offerings, there is no investor protection laws are involved. It can be in different footing. As for my opinion, whether you raise the money through the initial coin offerings or initial public issues as a share market, you must have investor protection. This has led to the real difficulty in the market because these organizations must deal with the varying approaches across the different countries. And the position also looks set to change potentially very significantly over the next few years. These problems are particularly stark when one considers the reasons the organizations wish to adopt cryptocurrency as a part of their infrastructure. The traditional methods of raising the capital to fund the growth of a business are debt financing and equity financing. This is clearly seen by both sides as a transaction in which the lender or investor should expect some form of return if the business is successful, but with an appreciation of the risk involved, particularly when early stage of the business. So for the startup business, this is a very good aspect because it is very fast, very cheap. Because any startup would like to grow very fast and also want to see kind of less charges, less kind of involvement. So for a startup business, this is a very good practice to utilize the blockchain technology. But because of the want of regulatory challenges, we see a lot of issues. So an organization wishing to sell tokens may seeking investment, yet it may also be attempting to build a user base through a network. If the organization is looking for an investment, it is perfectly reasonable to regulators and policymakers to expect it to comply with the usual investor protection laws. It would not seem equitable for an organization using cryptocurrency to circumvent these laws, where the money raised from the token is an investment. However, it is often the case that organizations using a token model want to build a network of users. So the objective in this case is to encourage people to become users of the organization service with the cryptocurrency used to pay for their provisions. If the organization proves successful, the value of the token should increase accordingly. As usually, there is a finite amount of new currency sold. In this way, it is the users of the ecosystem who can contribute to and benefit from this success and popularity rather than equity investors. These type of tokens are often referred to as the utility or consumer tokens. In that, they are designed not as an investment but rather a device or currency to consume or use particular services. In many jurisdictions, the regulators have acknowledged that there is a place for such tokens and that they may not be regulated as an investment. A difficulty arises when organizations wish to sell tokens both to potential users of the system, utility tokens, and to organizations that do not intend to use these prospective services. For example, an investment bank or venture capital company. Other challenges arise when the purchaser of the token buys many more tokens than the purchaser could possibly use, or when there is no usable services at the point when the token is issued. Utility tokens that are sold as an investment blur the line between what is regulated and what is not regulated, making it uncertain which regulations an organization must comply with in each jurisdiction in which a token is offered for sale. These issues together with the lack of a consistent global regulatory environment can make it very challenging for those organizations that wish to benefit from the creation of their own crypto asset. There are many reasons why such organizations may want to create their own crypto asset, such as the payment and settlement systems, example, and the benefit of the network effect mentioned above. Now, the next challenge is the privacy and data protection. The issues of privacy in blockchain technology has been intensely debated. Many practitioners and academic commentators have claimed that blockchain technology is incompatible with the privacy laws such as the GDPR and also as per the Indian law, which is in pipeline privacy law. As mentioned above, the original purpose of blockchain was to facilitate peer-to-peer transactions without the need of a central party. In a permissionless public blockchain system, no single party takes responsibility for the availability or security of the particular blockchain network, and all users of the system may have access to data on the network. So all the users, because they can access, they understand what is the data. So in fact, there is no privacy. These attributes conflict with the thrust of privacy laws, which require the party controlling personal data of an individual to safeguard the security and privacy of the data on behalf of the individuals or data subjects. But in this system, because the data is known to all the participants and there is no central party which is taking the responsibility, both a controller, the party that determines the purposes and means of the processing particular personal data, and a processor, a party responsible for processing the personal data on behalf of a controller, such as an outsourced service provider, have distinct obligations under the GDPR, making it important to determine whether a party qualifies as a controller or a processor when processing personal data is occurring. With a cloud computing system, typically those uploading personal data to the cloud environment are the controllers, and the operators of the cloud system is the processor. For example, currently almost the Apple phone and all the Microsoft, all the companies, they're providing the commercial the cloud computing. So if your mobile phone or laptop has a very less capacity for storing data, you can load data on the cloud. Generally, there are some free services provided, but if you want the kind of the more space, you have to purchase the space as a commercial basis from these companies, either Apple or maybe Microsoft, or the company who was providing the clouding service. Same thing happened in the cloud. If you share your upload your data on the cloud, this data is flowing throughout the world. You don't know which computer where the data is stored, because data is flowing. So there is some similarity between this cloud computing and this blockchain, because in the blockchain also the information is flowing throughout the world, also in the cloud. But this is a key area in which blockchain system differ. Many blockchain systems are operated by all the users in a peer-to-peer network environment, which makes it difficult to define whether users are controllers or processors. So, but in the cloud computing, what happened? The company is providing you services. You are the person. So, company is the processor because your data is processed. But in the blockchain system, the question is that because the peer-to-peer the transfer is there, so there is a question of the person who is the processor. So many blockchain systems are operated by all the users in a peer-to-peer network environment, which makes it difficult to benefit or define whether users are controllers or processors. So it is necessary to consider to what extent the different participants in the blockchain network are controllers based on their perspective and respective activities. Participants who submit a personal data to the blockchain are more likely to be considered as the controllers under GDPR, as they determine the details of processing, whereas nodes that only process personal data are more likely to be processors, as they simply facilitate the blockchain network's operation. However, this determination is not straightforward, as not all blockchain systems operate in the same way, and there can be different types of participants carrying out the various activities. The nodes in a blockchain system might be compared to autonomous systems on the internet. Each autonomous system receives packets and routes them autonomously to the another node, repeating until the packets reach their destination. The kind of processing that blockchain nodes perform is arguably similar. The only purpose of the nodes is to ensure the integrity of the blockchain and to validate the additions of the supplemental blocks. Privacy can be further protected through a blockchain system that use zero knowledge proofs. This allows nodes in the system to verify transactions without the details of the transaction or the public key, ensuring personal data is not processed by nodes. In the same way that a cloud service provider may not know what data a customer uploads to its cloud environment, administrators of a blockchain will not necessarily know whether personal data is present on the blockchain. Generic blockchain can be put to a wide variety of uses, and there can be a different data and configurations, making it very difficult to developer to build a privacy protection adapted to the nature of the data processed on the blockchain. At best, governance rules can regulate users of the blockchain to respect privacy laws when they upload personal data to the blockchain. For a private or permissioned blockchain for a particular purposes, governance rules can be much more developed, for example, by prohibiting the users from uploading particular types of data to the blockchain. Now the question about the transfer of data. So there have been debates in the cloud industry about when personal data is transferred overseas for privacy law purposes, and blockchain is likely to raise similar questions. For example, if a copy of a hash derived from personal data is made in Singapore, does this mean that data has been transferred to Singapore for the purposes of privacy law? in the sense that data may be transferred to a node in any location. Data put on a public blockchain is similar to data posted to the public internet. The reasoning of the European Court of Justice in the this Bodil versus Lindqvist case may apply to the question of transfer, although this case was in the respect of the European Data Protection Directive, which preceded the GDPR. The European Court of Justice held that it cannot be presumed that the word transfer, which is not actually defined in the directive, was intended to cover the loading by an individual of data onto the internet pages. A similar pragmatic approach is required for data on a blockchain to ensure that it is not transferred to every jurisdiction in which a node is present, causing unnecessary breaches of privacy regulations. As there is no single model for blockchain system, each project will have to be analyzed on its own distinct merits. Data security on the blockchain. So how much data is secure on the blockchain? So blockchain technology is often referred to as a tamper-proof. This is generally because each new digital block contains a record of transactions is connected to all preceding blocks. In order to tamper with any of the records contained in a block, a dishonest participant would need to change all subsequent blocks in the chain to avoid detection. Given that blockchain is a decentralized ledger, there is no single point of failure the dishonest participant can override. Instead, they would require a huge amount of power to override and alter the every node simultaneously. This is especially prominent in public blockchains where there can be any number of nodes existed everywhere in the world. Blockchain therefore presents a lower risk of attacks than the centralized system in which key servers can be targeted and altered without the trace. So that's why what we see currently, the government of India is digitizing all the land records. So in the land records, because in generally what happens in the land records, earlier we used to have the traditional method. We used the land record, the registers in the office. Now they're converting in digital form. So if we use the blockchain technology for land record purposes, it will be very useful technology, because in that case, if anybody want to hack the system, because currently if anybody hack the central server or central database of the Tehsil or district court where land records are kept, he has the potential to go and change the land records, change the names, and then what will happen, the land records will reflect somebody else's ownership. It may create challenges for some years ahead if nobody can track that what time it was changed. But if you are going to use the blockchain technology for land record purposes in the Tehsil or district court, it will be a very useful method, because if anybody would like to change the names of the land ownership, he cannot do, because he has to change so many records. Unless he will take into confidence a lot of people, he can't do, and that is impossible for any person. So that's why this way this technology is very, very useful. And also because currently we have seen in the COVID-19 period, people have shifted to work from home and already decentralized. So currently not a single university is fully functioning from the central place, because every faculty, every student, everybody is now operating from home, and they are distributed throughout the, in fact, those are foreign universities, they have throughout the world people are working for them. And for India, people are working from all parts of the country, and every work is going on. But this is the real kind of the scenario for India to shift from the normal practice to the blockchain model, because currently we are in the centralized model, and now we are moving automatically by nature has told us to adopt yourself in the decentralized model towards the blockchain. So naturally what I'm seeing that people by nature, they're trying to adopt the blockchain system that is going to the future for the country, even for the world. So this is a very good sign. The COVID-19 has made us realize as the importance of the internet technology, the importance of the blockchain technology, importance of the decentralization. possibility is that anybody either take into confidence all the participants, or in that case, it is very almost not possible to take into confidence of so many people to do some cheating and fraud and change the data, because central data is not there. In the central data system, you attack central data system and the server attack and you change the entire data. So that is the plus point of the blockchain. So this way, but still possibility is that from the point where at only chance is that from where the data is uploaded, that is node. From nodal place, if anybody is during the data upload, if that system can be controlled, there is a 15-year-old boy from the United Kingdom proved this attack possible by developing a proof of concept code that allowed backdoor access into hardware wallets sold by Ledger. Using this approach, it would be possible to change wallet destinations and amounts of payments. So what will happen? Because, for example, I am going to send some money to Mr. A, and some of the hacker, he has controlled my kind of A, what he has changed before. When I'm typing A, he is managed and he is typed B. Now the money will be going to B, because the entire chain will be trying to identify money is going to B. The money will be going to B. That the person who is sending to money to A is not aware that actually somebody has come in between and changed that particular ledger, and because node was attacked and it was changed from A to B. So this is the only possibility that is very, very rare, because even to change this at node level, you require very high computing power. That may also be possible because we are going to have the quantum computing. The quantum computing once will come, it is a very, very challenging kind of affair, because once it is commercialized, privatized, what will happen? Because the quantum technology can track your finger. If you are standing at least 10 feet away and somebody is having very high power quantum technology, he is from 10 feet away, he can scan your fingers and can utilize and do cheating and fraud. So all the Aadhaar cards, everything will be useless, because your finger was scanned 10 feet away, you are not aware. And he has utilized your finger and compromised your bank account, so many things. What I see in coming future, we have to switch over to the digital signature, we have to switch over to quantum technology, we have to switch over to the blockchain technology to make very safe and secure transaction. That is the future. That will be decentralized process for everybody. This possibility of double spending and DDoS attacks. So double spending attacks occur when the same currency units is assigned to multiple users, enabling them to use the same coin simultaneously. A distributed denial of service attack is a type of cyber attack in which a perpetrator attempts to render a service unavailable to its users by overwhelming its bandwidth, often by flooding it with high traffic. Blockchain systems are less susceptible to these kinds of attacks than a traditional centralized system, given the lower number of potential points of failure and ability to include denial of service prevention. So even this technology, the blockchain technology, is also safe and less impacted by the denial of the service attacks. Now, smart contracts. So smart contracts are self-executing software code that runs on a blockchain. So we have to now see the smart contracts. They are not in themselves contracts and often are not particularly smart. Contracts law will likely apply to the underlying transactions between the parties using smart contract, assuming that the arrangements between the participants otherwise fulfills the requirements for contract formation. The code in the smart contract defines the terms of an agreement on an if and else basis, and then automatically enforces those terms if and when the specific criteria programmed into the code are met. For example, the execution of a smart contract can be verified by the network of users on a blockchain system, removing the requirements of a trusted third-party intermediary. Smart contracts therefore have the potential to reduce cost in areas that typically rely on an intermediary today, such as clearing and settlement. So I told you that if you submit a draft or generally check goes to a clearing center house, and from there it clears. But by smart contracts, these things can be very, normalized. It can save a lot of time. As demonstrated in 2016 by the hack of the decentralized autonomous organization, public blockchain, it is possible to target smart contracts that are run on a blockchain system. In the instance of DAO, the hackers were able to move approximately 50 million US dollar in investor funds to a subcontract that the hacker controlled. This type of attack is less likely to occur in private blockchain systems due to the number of users that have access to the smart contract. However, features should be built into the smart contracts to ensure that any hack can be corrected retroactively. So out of these three, what I see, the private blockchain system is more secure. Even it can also save you from this smart contract attacks. As mentioned above, the traditional contract law may well apply to the underlying transactions embodied by smart contracts, and as such, the same liability issues apply to the smart contracts. Now, what are the governance and impact and accountability issues on the blockchain technology and cryptocurrency? In relation to the decentralized system, a key question for regulators is to who should be held accountable for breaches of law and regulations. This is similar to the problem of determining accountability on the internet before emergence of the blockchain. Accountability of the various parties carrying out the relevant activities on the internet has been fixing problems since its inception. Prior to the internet, information and other content such as music and video could only be published through existing publishers with an established distribution network, where there were legal issues about the content. For instance, issues with copyright infringement and defamation, the publisher was clearly accountable. For example, if you see the history of development of the communication technology, if you go back to the 50 years back, it was only given to the government official were used to have the mobile phones. Sorry, they used to have only landline phones, and they may have walkie-talkie. Only big officers from the defense, they used to have the walkie-talkie, the wireless phones and all. But now what happened? So this power of communication was only controlled, well licensed within the government system. Now it has percolated to every individual. So there is a lot of decentralization happened already in the communication network. From, if you go back to 60 years, to get a telephone connection, it was very, very serious matter. You have to apply, you have to show the justification. If you are a doctor, if you are a big businessman, they used to get a telephone. But right now, anybody can go and buy a mobile phone, buy the SIM card, give the Aadhaar card. Within 5 minutes, he can operate and he can do any cheating, fraud, business transaction, any part of the world. So this particular power of regulation from the government shifted to individual. It's a big shift from centralization to decentralization. Same way what is going to happen also for the business operation purposes in the blockchain model on internet, it is going to shift. So we do not require any third party central system, any peer-to-peer system. Even how it operates, the WhatsApp technology operates on the peer-to-peer basis. Even Zoom, what happened? Zoom, when Zoom technology started, it was very cheap, and people were actually rampantly using during the lockdown period. And we have seen a lot of crimes committed because of security challenges. Even somebody has filed suits in Court of India, that case is pending in Supreme Court of India. But recently, the Zoom company, they have said they're going to have a lot of security aspects, and also going to make it peer-to-peer technology. So anybody trying to venture during any kind of meetings, it will be very challenging for that person. So already we are moving towards this particular decentralized model, and COVID-19 has provided very strong kind of level playing field, and mentally everybody is now prepared to switch over to the blockchain model. So I see a lot of the bright kind of the field is coming towards the blockchain. That may further allow the governments to think. For example, Government of India was not supporting the online education, not allowing anybody to run any course, in online model. It was very challenging. But right now, we are actually, even once we utilize the online teaching learning process and everything, even government is now realizing, can government give some kind of the leeway to the law school or to the universities and colleges to run some courses, and also see how the blended model can run. Because only we should have the, physically we should have only those portions, those activities which is not possible to run online. if anything can run online, why not to run? Because it is saving a lot of time. For example, today's webinar, but I see there are a lot of participants, more than 150. Very easily, I'm going to connect with all of you, and all of you are having at different places, and we are talking. So if you see, outcome is almost same, but the kind of saving we are doing today, our time, energy, money is huge. So this way, input output, if you just compare, input is very less, but output is very, very high. Same way, if you see the blockchain technology, it is going to provide very heavy benefits. The way the market is growing, and we require a lot of experts. For example, anybody is going to launch a company and he requires 100 experts. So experts may be having at different locations in the world. They may be expert. They may be company may be trying to pay a very heavy price, but they are not interested to relocate because of the locational challenges. But because of blockchain technology, this will help any company to find out all the experts. They will be working from different locations. Output will be very high, input will be very less, and you are able to find out the workforce talented person that you require. So that's why this is a very, very important area to do research. So I suggest all the, because what I see, mostly faculty are participating in this particular FDP. So they should go ahead and they should please try to do some research, and let us help the government of India to frame policy. It is our job to make the regulations and policies so government of India can come forward and realize that the importance of the blockchain. Because generally what we see, people just write negative about all these things, and they focus more about that what is the negative aspect, but they forget the positive aspects. So it has more positive aspects, more kind of the benefits than negative aspect. So because I would want to give you a chance to ask questions, so I now want to quickly finish. So I want to just conclude that it is clear there are a number of important risk management concerns for any organization wishing to adopt blockchain technology. However, we have seen many of these challenges before in the adoption of the internet generally, as well as other technologies such as cloud computing. The key is for the organization to truly understand the risk inherent in the system and to ensure that these are the adequately managed and mitigated where necessary. The critical remaining issue is that the structure of the contractual frameworks and associated regulations was not designed for the decentralized data world of blockchain. In particular, understanding who is accountable and legally responsible is a major challenge. It is clear to us that adoption of the technology would be treated likely any other form of the outsourcing. For those wishing to adopt this new technology, there are three potential models to consider. So I'm proposing three models. So one is that the private or permissioned model, where a single party or group of parties takes responsibility for operating the system. This is the easiest path and would be no different from existing outsourcing cloud arrangements. A node controlled by a regulator could also be included to act as a neutral party. Second model, public blockchain system, where there is a clear contractual framework between the participants, one which reflects a more joint venture approach and the which looks to allocate liability and accountability to the parties. This could be accomplished effectively by kind of end user license agreements that conditions the use of the public platform on adherence, or perhaps even something that feels like an open-ended fund where anyone can join. But there is a clear legal, contractual, and risk allocation. In general, it would be seen that this model would have to be implemented on the inception of the system. Model number three, public blockchain system, where an organization takes on the responsibility and liability for running the system. This could be through open source system such as a Hyperledger, which has a core framework in place and the ability to organizations to alter the network according to their needs, grant permissions to those who need it, and keep out those who don't need it. It will likely be difficult for any organization that has to ensure effective risk management to consider a purely permissionless blockchain system without some additional protection. Of course, not all organizations have the strict requirements of financial services. Companies and other organizations in highly regulated sectors Regardless of the model adopted by those seeking to use blockchain, it is important that regulators remain flexible in their approach to this emerging technology and avoid weaving it through a lens designed for more traditional centralized platform. So my point is that first we have to come out from that particular notion that we always feel that only a uh, centralized system can run. We know that as the famous saying goes, uh, power corrupts and more power corrupts more, because if there is something centralized, it has more power. Power is concentrating. It has more potential to do more corruptions. If there is a decentralization of power, it has less chance for corruption. Same way, what I propose, let us avoid, change our mindset to be always in the centralized model. Let us feel the power of decentralization. Let us be very open, be democratic, and let us see from that lens to this technology. Then we are going to see lot of positive benefits. With these few words I want to close. Thank you all of you for the participation. Thank Ms. Anish Pillai for giving me chance to address all of you on this very important area for research and development, for learning and process. So now I want to open the floor for questions. If anybody has a question, please ask.
Hello, sir. Good morning.
Yes.
This is Aarti Ashok from Cochin. Sir, we have a couple of questions for you.
Yeah.
Sir, firstly, if you could choose a best practice in cryptocurrency from anywhere in the world, which would it be?
Best practice from US, they are actually using from the very beginning, and also they are very open about this technology. So they are having their lot of the transactions happening in the cryptocurrency and bitcoins. In fact, if you see the price of Bitcoin, it has gone very high because those who purchased bitcoins earlier, now it is just like the share market. So generally, it is openly, it is not allowed, but people are actually using this business. So price of the Bitcoin has gone very high, even several hundred times it gone higher. So those who, if anybody of you have purchased, you might be knowing that how important is this particular business. So I think US is a very advanced country in this particular area, and they are actually using very effectively the blockchain technology.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, what is the legality of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in India?
I just told you that the Arun Jaitley told when he was the finance minister, and so that he said that India is neither against, neither India is supporting the blockchain technology. So that's why what happened, because one of my friend he filed an RTI and want to get data about this blockchain. So he filed the RTI to RBI as well as the security market, to SEBI. So he wanted data. So what he realized that when the person who was the secretary to the RBI, the same person was secretary to SEBI. In RBI guidelines, he said that it is not allowed in India. But in fact, he was running a project under the SEBI where he is promoting this particular thought that let us allow the kind of the cryptocurrency to utilize in the share market. So for share purchase, he is there working, but for the other purposes by RBI, it is not allowed. So what I see, India government is totally confused that because they are in the conflict of the self-interest, political interest, as well as the commercial interest. What I feel that they should do a lot of research. We can also help the government to write articles, do some projects, and help the government to take a decision. Even the important economies of the world, they have already actually given green signal, and they're actually supporting this particular technology. Why not India? So it happens always for the country that we are always late in deciding the technological inventions and not giving the clean sheet for support and development. We always late, and then we always late take a late decision. What I feel, India is currently not very clear. India is in fact not supporting, but also not opposing. because they're actually confused. So we have to be doing a lot of research and writing to the government and helping the government to make a policy for the blockchain technology and cryptocurrency regulations.
Thank you, sir. Sir, would you understand Bitcoin as a negotiable instrument or as a property?
The Bitcoin will be just like the because what I feel it is a property because there's a direct peer-to-peer transfer is happening. For a negotiable instrument, you require a third party, and third party will be doing the noting, protesting, and giving you power of negotiation. So in that process, third party is always involved in the negotiable instruments. But in the cryptocurrency, what I feel, as in my opinion, that it should not be governed by the negotiable instruments law. It should be governed by some different law because there is no central system and the transfer happening between peer to peer, one person to other person. So there is no chance for negotiation and bargaining. Whatever you are transferring, that is going to other party. Okay, and there is no other charges involved. So we should not see from that perspective. We should better keep away from the negotiable instrument law and banking regulations. We should have a separate regulation for cryptocurrency and blockchain technology because the nature and the entire process is different. Entire philosophy of this is different than the model of negotiable instrument.
Thank you, sir. And the last question, can the Estonian model be adopted in India and to what extent?
Please, can you repeat the question?
Can the Estonian model be adopted in India and to what extent?
What is this model, Estonian model?
Sir, I'm not actually very clear because it's a question that has come from one of the participants.
Can you ask the participants to ask the question and tell me what is the Estonian model? What in what context
Sure,
asking? Yeah.
Hello, Adira, kindly ask question directly.
Hello?
Sir, am I audible?
Yeah, please.
So good morning, sir. Thank you for that very informative lecture. So I read that the government in Estonia has embraced blockchain technology and is applying it to every aspect of their governance.
Okay.
Because it's a smaller jurisdiction, maybe it is possible. So I was just wondering how that could play out in India because, like you said, if it is a completely tamper-proof kind of a ledger model, then even in governance it would probably lead to more effective, better administration without any kind of kind of bribes or corruption or anything of that creeping in. So how do you think that can be right now where India can adopt it and put it across the entire administration system? So that was my question. Thank you.
Okay, very good question. Thank you. So Estonia was the country we're talking. I thought these were talking some philosophy. So because see what's happening in this in the South African countries, all these small countries very quickly adopting all the cryptocurrency blockchain model. So one thing is very clear that because they are small, they are just emerging and growing. They can easily adopt anything new. For any big country like India, it is always challenging to change the entire system because it is not very easy to change the entire system. It has plus and minuses. So what India feels, the major threat in India is that the regulation of the black money. Because India feels that the moment we give green signal to the blockchain technology and the cryptocurrency, all the black money will be and money laundering will be rampant practice. Entire thing will be starting. In fact, people are now investing in the blockchain because it is difficult to find out who is transferring to whom and how much money is there. Because as per the record, there are I think more than $20 billion industry is already there in the blockchain model, and the majority of money is the black money because there is anybody can directly transfer and buy and share anything. So India is worried about the black money model. Once India will be very sure that there is no black money in the country and nobody will be able to utilize black money for the blockchain technology, I think India can then easily adopt. But I think even the black money is also already happening. Everything happening even in this current model. So because of that thing, we should not keep waiting. We'll be late. So I think we should stop, and also we should have very strong, very clear regulation where we should try to filter out the black money. I think that will be a very challenging process. But I think if we have very structured, very processed guideline, we can stop some black money to venture in this field. So for India, only challenge is that India feels that black money will pump in the blockchain and cryptocurrency model if India allow legally this kind of business. Hope you got the answer. Hello.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So thank you for a very informative session. That brings us to the end of the question and answer session, sir. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule for us and for this wonderful talk. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you all of you. Thank you all the participants.
Dear participants, kindly note that the feedback has been shared to you. Kindly fill in the feedback at the earliest, and we will meet you for the afternoon session at 2 o'clock. The session is concluded. Thank you.
I congratulate the organizer because what I see there are around 280 participants and all are faculty. So almost I think almost all the law school faculty participating.
Yes,
That
sir,
is a
that
very
we have.
successful program. So I congratulate you and the organizing team to able to attract very good number.
Thank you, sir.
What I
Thank
see,
you.
lot of participants are known to me. Some are my students, some my colleagues, somewhere my old colleagues. So it is very nice to see on the screen to all my old friends, colleagues, and my old earlier student. Thank you all of you. It was nice to see you on the screen and nice to address all of you. Thank you and wish you all the best.
Thank you,
Please
sir.
keep safe yourself. Take care and wish you all the best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the support.